What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel, Built by Bailey's. Alright, this video is going to talk about the basics of using a speed square, which in my opinion is the most important tool in the bag. In fact, we'll go through really quickly my top 4 most essential things you need to have in your tool belt, starting with a pencil. Because if you can't use a pencil, if you don't have a pencil, then you can't use a speed square, you can't use a tape measure, you can't measure stuff. You got to be able to mark stuff down. So it's essential to have a pencil in your tool bag, and make sure it's a good sharp pencil. Carpenter pencils are great. I actually like to use smaller ones because I can get a nice, clean, sharp, tiny point for all of the marks I'm going to make throughout all of the building process. Okay, so number 1, pencil. Number 2, like I mentioned a minute ago, you need a tape measure. We got to be able to make measurements. Okay, so have a nice, sturdy, good tape measure. Be able to have a locking mechanism in it, so forth. Okay, so that's number 2. We're going to move right into what the speed square is, because that's really the essentials of this video. So speed square is number 3. If you guys don't know what a speed square is and you're watching this video just to try to figure out what it is, you're going to learn what it is, and I'm going to show you some cool tricks and all the different things you can do with it. This is a speed square. Definitely needs to be in your tool belt. And then the last thing that you'll probably need in your tool belt, honestly, is one of these. No, I'm kidding. Chalk line is very important because you'll be making lots of marks. And I can find my chalk line, I swear to you, I have one in my bag. Chalk line, very important. Now, the colors of a chalk line, I've described those in other little shorts and videos and stuff, but it's all preference based on what you're cutting, marking, whatever. But those are my top 4 things you need in your tool bag, okay? So now, with that being said, let's dive into the beef and the meat of this video, which is how to use a speed square and the speed square basics. Let's go. Alright, so this is the speed square, as I said, and there's lots of crazy numbers and notches and all kinds of things on this particular one. We're going to go through, like I said, the basics. If you're watching this video hoping to learn how to cut rafters, I'm going to do a separate video for that. But we'll talk about that very briefly as to where those numbers are and what that means. We will talk about the pivot point, so if you're kind of trying to get into that part of the speed square analogies and uses, then that'll be part of this video as well. But let's go ahead and start with the very, very basics. As I said, it's a square, so it's actually 90 degrees on one end, and then this is actually a 45-degree angle. So first thing you can do with a speed square is I can lock it on this flange here on the back of a board, and I can draw and scribe a 90-degree line, right, perpendicular to the length of the board. Okay, this is good for squaring up stock on a job site. You know, a lot of times we need to actually have a perfect cut. Sometimes from the mill you might have, you know, boat areas, or if you're fixing a piece of board, or if you're just cutting a piece in general and you need to mark it to a certain length and you need to square it off, well, there you go. Like I mentioned, you've got the 45-degree angle on it. Again, you can just lock this sucker right on, hold it tight, right, just like this, and I can draw a 45-degree line. There it is, 45 degrees, and you've got yourself a perfect 45-degree square to cut off of, okay? All right, another handy-dandy trick and tool is when you're doing framing. There is a reason why this speed square is 7 inches long from point A to point B here. And that is because a typical 2x4 is 3.5 inches on width. Okay, so 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. And actually, this is actually like 7 1/8. And the reason why is I can go ahead and hook up 2 of my top, say this is a top and bottom plate for my framing. I can hook these 2 together and do my entire layout for top and bottom plate without having to remark each board. Meaning, if I'm going to go ahead and mark my studs at a certain location here, I've pulled my tape measure and I've measured to this point. I can mark here for my X, and there's my studs. I don't have to move this, so now my top and bottom plate are marked. Same thing as if I'm going to do them this way, right? Depending on how you're framing something up, obviously I've got enough girth here to do the same thing, right? Okay, so that's the reason why this thing is actually 7 1/8 inches long this way. Cool, easy tip. All right, like I talked about earlier, it's got a pivot point in it. So let's bring back our 2x6 here. And this pivot point, if you guys can see this in the camera, is right here. See, it actually says pivot on it. right there, pivot, okay? So that you can just take and hook for different angles you're trying to make. Again, moving into the common rafters, bird's mouth cuts, so forth, I can actually hook this on here at any specific angle. I'm gonna do it this way so you guys can see. Okay, so let's just say I'm looking for, on this, I'm looking for a certain angle. Okay, so these are my angles down here. You can see 45. See these numbers right here? These are all angles, okay? Also can be used for rafter cuts, okay? So rafter tails, commons, that's all described in here. Like I said, I'm gonna do a separate video on that, so don't hang around if you're waiting for me to do it on this video particularly, but I'm gonna show you how to use this pivot to get angles. If I don't wanna cut a 45-degree angle, which is what that one would be, right? I can pivot it. So I can take that, hook it on my pivot, and if I wanna cut a certain angle, I can rotate it to where, on here, I wanna cut a certain angle, okay? So let's say I wanna cut it at 25 degrees. I line up 25 right here on this edge. Okay, so 25 along the edge of this board, and then I can draw my line. That's a 25-degree angle, right? I can do anything I want on here. If I want to go to 45, I can bring it all the way out. There's a 45-degree angle, okay? That's how you can use this as an actual angle to cut different, different types of angles if it's outside of the 45-degree edge here. This is also a quick and handy way to actually square up or check for square of a wall, a corner, whatever it is you're building or working with. I mean, even for woodworking, it's pretty handy to be able to do this. So if I'm trying to figure out where, if this wall is squared up for say, or if I'm trying to square up two boards to nail together, I can stick it right in there, right? And as long as if I got that in there nice and tight, and I don't have any wiggle, I can push one side or the other of whatever board I'm trying to manipulate here and make sure I get my hands out of the way. Once I got those flush to both ends of the square, right, here and here, I'm at 90 degrees. I can go ahead and nail these two boards together knowing I have perfect 90-degree squared up boards or wall, or if it's out, I can determine what I need to do. So, quick way to test for square on this. Another essential way to use your speed square. All right, another way you can use your speed square is, let's just say you're not using a chop saw on a job site, or you don't have a chop saw available for you, but you want to get a clean, squared up cut even after you mark your line. You can use this as a guide. I can just hook this right to the board itself, and I can run as a guide, almost like a track saw. I can run my blade, my saw, right up against this speed square as a guide. So obviously, and if it's not obvious for you, then you need to pay attention again. Making sure your hand's not right in front of this saw as you're going to run it. You want to have it way out here to the edge, okay? You can grip down tight, and then you can go ahead and run that saw right up against. So run this guide right against the speed square, and you can make a nice straight cut if you don't trust yourself to make the cut on the line without a guide. Now, if you don't feel comfortable just keeping your hand here, which is understandable, you can even go ahead and get clamps or vice grips or anything and pinch this thing down and keep your hand out of the way and just hold the board, and you can go ahead and cut along that same guide, okay? So it's a great way to make nice straight cuts, and it is intended to be able to use that way. That's why this guide is here as well. You can run these things right up against each other, and bam, you got a nice straight cut. All right, another really useful thing to use with your speed square is to flush up two boards if you're trying to cut them together, or if you're trying to glue them up. Let's say you're building a header or laminating a beam together, or a couple joists. I can take the flat edge of this speed square here, and I can actually use it to push these two boards together until that's nice and square, right? And then I know these two are flushed up, and I can go ahead and nail it, glue it, screw it, whatever you're going to do together. Got it nice and tight here, okay? And then one more thing with this speed square that I'll show you guys, and this particular one actually does not have any of these notches, but you can have notches running along your measurements in here, because this is a tape measure as well. You can see I've got increments in inches here and here. I can actually use the speed square as a scribe to go ahead and run if I wanted to go ahead and draw a guideline without having to use chalk line or something else to draw a line all the way across, or a level or so forth. I can actually use this as a guideline, and I can find a point along here if I have notches, or some of them are set up the other way along, you know, this increment as well. I can use this, and you can set your pencil into those notches. I can use this as a scribe with this particular speed square as well, but the notches are a lot easier because you can lock your pencil in. And I can go ahead and find whatever my mark is, and on this one I actually will take the speed square and I'll find a mark on here, a measurement, and I'll make that mark, and then I'll flip it over and I'll actually take it this way. And if you get good at it, it's not that hard to do, but I can actually set my pencil here and I can drag it along, and you can make your guideline that way. So they have the notches, they're a lot easier, but again, I can just pick a point along this line, or if I measure it ahead of time, I can mark it and I can take my speed square, use it as a guide. Set your pencil a little bit of an angle, and then just drag it along, and you can just scribe lines that way all the way across the board. So, alright guys, that's it for the essentials and basics of a speed square. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you got any other questions, drop them in the comments below. Don't forget, on the way out, if you liked this video, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you share it with others so we can spread more knowledge out there. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the channel. I would really greatly appreciate that. And ding that bell for notifications if you want notification of when I'm putting out more videos, including the other videos on using the speed square for common rafters and how to cut rafters. And until next time, guys, I'm going to go take a break. Cheers. Keep building.